Welcome to Discussions of Music, Healing, and Consciousness with your hosts, Chris Noble and Bill Paratzman. In today's episode, we're talking about Stranger Things because, well, Kate Bush's song from the 80s, Running Up That Hill, hit the top 10. How could we let all of that go by without unpacking some of it? Alongside the amazingness that is the music behind Stranger Things, we also dive into the music in dreams. Do your dreams have a soundtrack? The brain's theta state, and the power of intention when using music. It's truly beautiful to watch the influence of music in popular culture and to observe how consciousness has evolved as a result. So this is your invitation to jump into a time machine and reflect with us on the not-so-distant past. We'll be talking about all that and much, much more, as always, in these open conversations here on Discussions of Music, Healing, and Consciousness. So we have to talk about, even though it's fictional, we have to talk about Stranger Things and the music that's in there.
Fantastic soundtrack.
I mean, you can get the whole soundtrack, all the songs on Spotify, stuff like that, and they really have given such incredible attention to the music and how it's used. And spoiler alert, we might say some things about the latest season here. Chris hasn't seen it, so I'm going to be careful.
Yeah, so just for you listening, I haven't seen it either, so Bill's going to spoil it for a little bit of us, but I think it's important. I don't think anything major is going to get revealed.
Nah.
And I think it's really great to talk about pop culture references like Stranger Things when we're talking about music and consciousness and all these things, because it's just something tangible that we can, art is great for that. It's just to use as a reference point for everyone to kind of understand these crazy big concepts we sometimes tackle here on the show.
This is so crazy because I'm going to dance around a lot of it, but let's start with the obvious. So okay. Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill is, I don't know, it's from the 80s, right? It's a while ago. But thanks to Stranger Things, it's now in the top 10.
Wow.
And there's a huge, beautiful reason for this. And this is where it's going to be tough to do the spoiler alert. But so we'll just set the whole thing up because you've been listening to Chris and me for a while here. And we're talking about how music relates and how it works. And, physiologically, it helps us out. So Stranger Things, of course, a lot of it takes place in the imagination. And one of the cool things about the imagination is how closely it's tied into real life. I know that's really weird to say, but in Stranger Things, the two are almost the same. There's times when you're upside down,
right, and
it feels real. And the real question is, of course, are you there? And I think Stranger Things would say, yes, in fact, you are there. Physically, you are in the upside down. It's not just a terrifying figment of your imagination.
Right.
It's a real thing. The idea, though, is that you can manipulate that upside down. And in the latest season of Stranger Things, that's done really successfully in this sequence where a character is dragged into the upside down. I won't tell anybody what it is, and then is able to get out of that with music.
Cool.
And it's done so well. So I've already given you the huge spoiler for the first 4 episodes that music is so key here. But we had to go back and watch that key episode. We had to watch it twice to actually figure it out, what they were doing in order to align music for this. And this has happened before in Stranger Things. If you're a close watcher, you'll notice that it's happened before. And music is just there. So we've talked about this before. Your favorite songs are your most powerful, right? And in this sequence, Kate Bush's song is used to rescue one of the characters, to get them back out of the upside down. Now, the song doesn't really have anything to do with what's going on there. It just happens to be like the favorite song of this character, right? And that's significant because, well, you'd kind of think, given popular culture, that, if you were feeling down, you'd play a happy song, right?
Right.
And that is definitely not what happens in this. I mean, the character's catatonic, but music is able to get through. So let's just start there because this is so cool and so weird to me. So you ever had a dream where music is in the dream?
Oh, yeah.
I haven't had any dreams like that. And I'm in music, right? but I haven't had dreams where the music is there. So tell us about like a dream where the where there was music, because I haven't experienced that, and I'm really curious what it's like, in real life, not in Stranger Things.
Oh, I mean, like for me, I'll even have dreams where I'm playing music. So
Yeah.
there's music in that tangible sense of like performance. Sometimes it's before performance that I'm dreaming of it not going well, perhaps. And,
Yeah, I've
you
had
know,
that, but I've never played. Right?
mm,
I'm like terrified to play, so I've never played.
okay,
So
yeah. So I've played before. Music is it feels very natural in the dream, of course, much like most things in the dream. But some things that even in the dream, you're like, well, that's kind of crazy, But music feels pretty normal, if anything. Almost so normal that yeah, it adds like it's kind of almost like a layer. Sometimes I wonder like if I could go back into some of my dreams and actually see, I'm like, is there a soundtrack playing in the dream? It's
yeah,
not like, not even like there's a song that I'm listening to in the dream, but an actual, almost like in a movie where there's a background score
right, right.
playing in your dream. I honestly wonder, now that you've brought this up, because I don't think I've ever thought about this ever, Bill, before. So now that you brought it up, I'm really curious for my next dreams. I'm going to start paying attention to that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really curious. Is there like a song you recognize? Is it just ambient sound? Is it like a movie soundtrack? That's kind of building to some climax. I, I mean, I feel like so ignorant on this because I just don't have either. I don't remember or don't have music in my dreams. It's really
Interesting.
weird. Now, if
Yeah.
somebody plays music and wakes me up, that's a different thing.
Right.
You know, uh,
And is that what happens in this show? It wakes up, or I guess gets dragged out of
yeah,
the upside down.
yeah. I mean, obviously, the character goes from being catatonic to being okay, and alive, and fully conscious of everything that's happened, of course, in the upside down, because all the kids in Stranger Things are amazing. So
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
don't remember, what happened 3 days ago, but in the middle of a crazy upside down sequence, they can remember every single detail. So that's really cool. But
Now, sorry, you brought,
no, go ahead.
go ahead.
I was just butting on myself to give myself another chance to say something, but I haven't anything else to say. So
Well, I think what you put into my mind is that when you say catatonic, and I've had personal experiences and also seen some incredible video footage of people in a catatonic state, who get music played to them, and again, like you've said many times, specific music that is particular to the individual, that might resonate with a moment of childhood, perhaps, or a point in time when they were their most alive, their most mobile, youthful, whatever. And that music is then played to that person. So, for example, I watched a documentary, and I don't think it was. I'm just going to be blank on the names anyway. Oliver Sacks, Dr. Oliver Sacks
yeah,
did
yeah,
Musicophilia.
yep.
I think he was interviewed in this documentary, and this was one of his patients. I can't remember exactly the details. Regardless, there's an older gentleman, certainly elderly. He's fully catatonic, can barely move and speak or anything. No, he's just immobile in every sense. And then they give him, like, his family tells the individuals in the documentary, as well as the old age home people, that he played in a big, I think like a New Orleans kind of big band,
Nice.
typical, like, I don't know what instrument, probably a trumpet or something like that. And he played in this band. It was a big part of his life. He loved it, loved it, loved it. Music was a big part of his life. So they found some songs that he would have played back in the day, and they put the headphones on him and they played it. And within several minutes, the fingers start to tap, arm starts to move, leg starts to move, and he starts to smile. He starts to like move in his chair, and then after like not only maybe 15 minutes of the music, he's talking. They interviewed him after this, and then you could see him speak and talk, and had a life to him. All of a sudden went from being catatonic zombie almost, to a human, a live, conscious human, with a zest, and with, like, real color to their speech and to their movement. And wow, I mean, powerful, of course, to witness that, and just to see what music can do. In Stranger Things, I think it's a great artistic representation of where music penetrates our consciousness, because it goes beyond the barriers of the brain. When the brain gets hit with things like Alzheimer's, dementia, that's a neurological disorder. And as we know from, from actual scientific clinical studies, consciousness is more and more being proven to be non-local, meaning it does not originate in the brain as we used to think. And I think both of us, through our own personal experiences, know that. But science is also confirming that that consciousness is non-local, and it's really interesting to see how music sidesteps almost these blockades in our brain and taps right into the consciousness of us, and then our consciousness responds and then is able to actually transcend or break down those neurological barriers that we originally had, and then life comes back to the body and the body can move. It's animated again. You're doing things. And to think that the only ingredient that was added was music is
Yeah.
just mind-blowing.
Well, it's supposed to be. I think it is supposed to literally blow through our minds,
It's a good point. You're right. Yeah,
you
literally.
know, to get to whatever it is that it's getting to, or to reconnect us maybe to what it's supposed to connect us to. I've had the opposite experience where, like listening to Chris's 40 hertz work. So, right, I've totally gone into that theta state, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not conscious of the music that's there, but I am conscious of it taking me there. And then while I don't hear it while I'm in the theta state, when I come out of it, I hear it again.
Right. Yeah.
So something's happening in there, while I'm gone or out, or, it's like the do not disturb sign is up.
So I was like, please hold. Your brain's
Yes,
like
processing occurring. But it's like the brain has decided just to shut down there. I mean, obviously they measure it and it hasn't, but I'm not.
slow down for sure.
It's way slow. Yeah. And, I'm not processing input from the eyes. I know that I'm playing, or the song's playing in my ears, but nothing else that's sensory is engaged. It's like it doesn't need to. It's like all that stuff just turns off. Okay, five senses. We take a rest. Now, in Stranger Things, while the character, I'm using catatonic sort of on purpose because I don't want to give away too much of it.
Yeah.
But this is definitely not a theta state. This is an intense dream state.
Right.
But we're allowed to see what's going on in the dream, which feels very much like real life. And instead of music sending that character there, music rescues, the character. And that's really new for me, Chris, because I'm happily going to bliss out into music whenever I can. Great thing. But in a terrifying dream state that music can get through, I don't remember the last time I woke up like from a nightmare. Do you? It's like, what wakes us up from a nightmare? Just saying, oh my God, this is crazy. Get me out of this, and waking up.
Kind of. I think that's recently for me, I'd say that's been
right. Right. So there's we have some agency. And it's very interesting to me that the Duffer Brothers decided to write this so that when the character finds their agency, they realize that they can grab hold of this musical rope, and pull themselves out. And I mean, I've never had an experience like that. I mean, do you know anybody who's ever had music rescue them from a nightmare?
Not from a dream state. I mean, also you think about how you would need somebody else to play that, because obviously you're not going to be the one to play that music to then get you out of the dream state. So there has to be another physical individual involved in that experiment, I guess. And I haven't certainly experienced or heard anything of that, but it's interesting, even what's funny about the dream state is in a way, it's like, is it any different than reality in some senses? Because when we're in a dream,
good point. Yeah.
A dream isn't like you never come back, come out of a dream and tell somebody, I watched this dream last night. It's not a third party perspective. You're in the dream.
Yeah.
Your consciousness is there, and you always will say, everyone, when they recount a dream, they say, oh, I was walking down the street and then I saw this person and then this happened and then I did that, or I went there. And you're speaking like present tense or past tense of first person perspective,
Yeah, yeah,
you're in it. You're physically, well, you're consciously in that dream state, which I know there have been some studies, and I know with a certain more esoteric teachings and maybe Eastern philosophical teachings do talk about the fact that you're traveling to those places with your, you can call it astral body or your
yeah.
consciousness when you're in a dream state. So, you know, it's interesting when you're in those states. Like, I would be curious to see if you could, maybe one way you could maybe do this would be setting your alarm, and instead of it being a typical alarm, it's a song that you know has really powerful properties over you, because you would have to pick that very strategically, and then your alarm would be this song, and then see if that song creeps into the dream and pulls you out of it, instead of it just being like a meh, meh, classic alarm or
Yeah.
whatever that would be. And maybe see if that would do something in your dream states, because like how else would you even conduct that experiment, really, right? You have to have somebody
You need a
sitting there
second.
just waiting for you to fall into a dream, and then boop, click the button and play running up that hill or whatever.
I know there's research on this out there, which is, sadly, I'm uninformed on dream research, but maybe it comes closer to the psilocybin state. That sometimes magical, sometimes terrifying level of consciousness where you feel connected to everything. Now, this is not anything like what's in Stranger Things, but I'm just curious, because you've had that kind of experience, what music might be applied to that. So let's say you're blissed out on mushrooms, and then somebody comes and puts a headset on, and playing in the headset is music that triggers you in some way, good, bad, or otherwise.
Right.
Um, how do you respond to that? I guess is the question. And for anybody who's listening to this and wants to try that, try it with some music that you love, right? And or music that you don't, and just see what your response is, like an experiment.
Yeah.
And let us know, because it's really fascinating to me how we in the conscious world can sort of play with what's happening to folks in the subconscious world, um, not as hypnotists or any other way, but to be able to facilitate that. So if I
I
was like, in a mushroom state, and I said, Chris, I want you to play this music, at 1 hour in or whatever,
right.
put my headphones on, hit play, right? And if I resist, then don't do it. But obviously, because I'm curious, and then conduct it like a little, hey, what could go wrong if we just play music while we're on mushrooms, kind of a thing.
Well, right. I mean, I have a sort of similar experience where many, 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 many years ago, I was camping with a friend of mine. It's just the two of us, and he did a large dose of MDMA, and I did mushrooms. No, he did mushrooms, and I did MDMA. I can't remember. But either way, both psychedelics and a solid dose of both. And we may have even mixed them, actually. I think that was more accurate. And I'm not recommending that for people out there, but if you're doing it in microdoses, mixing the two isn't necessarily the worst thing. But hey, I'm not a doctor, and I'm definitely not a specialist in that, so let's not take this too far here. But I did it, and I'm still here. And regardless, the situation was that we were on a solid dose of psychedelics, and I was going off into just major bliss, like just feeling incredibly connected, in love with nature, feeling like I was nature, nature is me, all that wonderful stuff that you can feel in psychedelics. And then I was talking to my buddy, we're having a great conversation, and then I look away for a couple minutes, lost in my own little world as you do on psychedelics, and then I look back to my friend, and he was white as a ghost, like he just lost all the color in his face, and he looked at me, he's like, he had had a couple of what we used to call bad trips. I don't believe in bad trips anymore. I think everything that you experience in psychedelics is what you're meant to experience. And I think we're learning more now, but especially back when I first was doing them, there's just no education on them. And certainly the idea of integration, or the idea of having depths of like your trauma or deep fears surface when you're on psychedelics, that's just natural. That stuff happens, and it's not a bad trip. It's only a bad trip when you have no idea how to deal with it.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, so he looked at me and he's like, hey man, I'm having a really bad trip all of a sudden. Like, I'm going to somewhere really, really dark, and I'm really, really scared. And he had those in the past and was so hesitant to do psychedelics again. And I fully get that. And anyway, he just looked, I saw like such deep fear and like in his eyes. And I just because I was on such a sort of like godlike state of consciousness in that moment, I just picked up my guitar like totally in a moment, just feeling so loving and peaceful. I'm like, okay, cool. I didn't panic. I didn't nothing of the sort. Like I just felt like, okay, I'm just gonna blast him with like love and reassurance. And I picked up my guitar and I just started strumming, playing some chords. I wasn't even singing a song. I was just playing the guitar and I was just playing what felt in that moment like something that was needed, just a couple of different chords in a certain progression that felt uplifting,
Yeah.
felt rejuvenating. I may have hummed a little bit to it, but I wasn't even doing like songs per se. I was playing what I felt needed to be played in that moment. And after about 10 minutes of just kind of coaxing him with sound and with music, he turned around again and the color was back in his face. And he's just like, I'm good. Like, thank you. Like the music literally acted as like a lifeline or a
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you know, like a flotation device you throw to someone drowning in the water. And he was able to grab onto that music and just reel himself back into shore, so to speak, and was able to then we ended up having a fantastic time after that. It was just this moment where the music literally saved him. It rescued him from that state of consciousness that he really didn't want to have to go into at that moment. And it was really cool to see how music was literally the lifeline in that particular circumstance. So again, just a testament to the power of the right music at the right time on psychedelics, especially.
And even the inspired right music. I mean,
Yes,
you probably didn't write it
improvised.
down and became a composition and
Not at all. Just
sold a million
riffing
copies,
around.
just riffing.
Yeah,
So any even, riffing music can be a lifeline. And I'm thrilled that they've identified the song. It's like Kate Bush running up the hill. Okay, so we know
right.
that. But maybe that doesn't work for me. Maybe I just need somebody to riff on the guitar or something.
Right. I mean, like think about like sometimes the simplicity of all you need is like that, like some humming a really like a lullaby that you don't even
Yeah,
know what it is, and it brings you back to like like 1 or 2 years old, and your mother or somebody or your grandmother or something is singing to you, and you feel that deep sense of security and safety and love and all that, and that's what helps you in that moment. It's just somebody humming. It can be anything. You do not need to be a musician to have that experience at all.
exactly. Right. That's so incredible because we don't really know anything about the Stranger Things kids. Like
Right.
they're not. We don't know if they're musical or not. Who knows? But they all listen. We all did. I had my Walkman,
I
right?
love the Walkman.
And so they're conscious of music. Music is around them, like it would have been around any teenager at any point in history, I guess.
Really? Yeah.
I mean, sure, why not, right? We just kind of relate to that as kids. The difference, though, which is so curious to me, is that in the experience you had with your friend, you were playing a more calming kind of a thing,
Yeah.
and he was terrified. And it's obvious in Stranger Things that the the character in Stranger Things is also terrified, at least to the outwards. But on the inward side, the character is very brave and does the right thing.
Hmm.
Here's the music, gets the hell out of there, and um, that's a whole different scenario than the one where all you need is just somebody calm this down, right?
Right.
And it's amazing to me that music works both ways.
Yeah.
I'm a big advocate of like music for anger, like we talked about last time. Finding some anger music to let that consciousness flow through you instead of stuffing it inside.
Hmm.
There's none of that explanation in Stranger Things, which is fine. You don't need it. But you can see that the music rescues. And maybe it doesn't matter what kind of music it is, as long as it's something that you resonate for.
I think so too, right? Because like in certain moments where I'm going down sometimes a not so great road, mentally or emotionally speaking, sometimes, and this is actually quite recently, I've thrown on, and I think I talked about this in the last episode too with anger, was I was throwing on some heavy dubstep and trap again,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and I went back to this aggressive, heavy, hard hitting music in a state where I normally would have probably put on something very soothing, some crystal bowls, some nice frequencies, whatever that would be. Not in this moment. I was actually like it almost like felt like sometimes like I'm like, I actually want to dive more into this feeling right now, because there's something here to learn from, and I almost need to pump myself up like you're going into battle, right? And I know that a lot of army vets talk, or just people in the army in general talk about music that they listen to literally pump them up for pretty terrifying and obviously high adrenaline, high aggression battle situations. You can't really get much more intense than that. And there's certain music that they listen to get into that zone, just like athletes would before, going onto the field or the pitch or the arena or whatever the sport they're playing. So, that's another thing too, is where, even though maybe you're in a state where you're like, well, normally I'd want to really calm myself down here. Sometimes, again, it just doesn't matter almost. It just depends on what you need in that moment. But sometimes you throw in something that almost is on the same level of what you're experiencing, and it heightens it even more, but in a way that helps you somehow in that
Yes.
situation.
Oh, I totally do. I mean, we've talked about this so much. It's incredible how you get that edge from music. It's like the coach's pep talk before the big game. Same kind of effect, but without the words often, although a lot of music we play to amp up has got words to it. But I mean, this is why the pep band plays, in the stands to keep people amped up.
Oh my God, music's huge in sports. You mean you don't?
It's incredible.
I've been conscious of that more later in life, like going to games and hockey, basketball, whatever sport it is,
Yeah,
and even just every time the whistle goes and there's a lull in the game, music, music, music. Keep
always.
and I know there's other intentions behind that. Of course, it's like keep you awake and alert so that the advertisements can keep running and keep pumping, and it is that side of it too. But I think we also can all agree as well that it is to really pump up the audience, get you engaged. I mean, that the original version of that was the organ,
Yeah, the pipe organ.
and the pipe organ, right?
Yep.
Sure,
Yep.
whatever. And it works, and there's a reason why those still are played, 100 years later at sporting events, because it works. It gets everyone amped, and guess what? When the crowd gets amped, the performers, the players, whatever,
Oh yeah, you feel
they
it on
get
the
amped.
field.
Oh my
Totally feel it.
God, it is like my limited experience with that in playing like high competitive sports when I was younger was it's like a drug. It was like amazing feeling when you get the whole crowd going when you do something awesome in the game, and you're like, whoo, I am ready. Let's like your adrenaline is just pumping. It's powerful.
It's really incredible the way that it works. And I mean, you feel sometimes the poor organist, they've got to choose all this music, right? But they've got experience because they've been doing this a while. So they practiced at this. They know exactly what music is going to fit in exactly what situation. And if they
hmm
don't, they're going to make a pretty good guess, you know?
They got the music for when the ref makes a bad call or the umpire makes a bad call, and they got the music that they know the fans are gonna be like, yeah,
Yeah,
terrible
yeah,
call, man,
yeah,
or when they score a goal or they get a point or whatever, it's the same
yeah.
thing. There's different music for that, and
Yeah.
again when you know the right thing to play with for the people in that moment, that's where you get that synergy of energy where it almost like they're both strong on their own, but then together it becomes exponentially powerful.
You guys have walk-on music for, I know at least in baseball they do. I don't know if they have this in football, probably not in hockey, but whenever a batter comes up, he's got his walk-on music. And he's
Yeah,
chosen that
classic in
music,
baseball. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that's like, oh, this is so cool because so and so coming to the plate, and we know exactly the mindset that they're in,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that's really powerful stuff. I mean, it wouldn't work if the organist chose the walk-on music.
No.
As like just sort of out of your hat, pull whatever it is. Chris Noble's coming to bat. What is his walk-on music? Well, who
Right.
knows? Let's just try. And so they
Yeah.
play something, but I love the intention that's behind that.
hmm
And just in my lifetime, I've watched that personal music intention sort of grow and grow and grow to the place where it's not just a fight song for the whole stadium. Now it's an individual tune or a clip that reminds us of the whole song
Mm.
that's in that 5-second window when so and so comes to the plate, right?
Oh yeah.
That's incredible. Well, first of all, we have the technology, but isn't it great to hear your song?
Oh, I can only
I mean,
imagine what that'd
right?
be like for the batters. Like so. And I've always loved that with baseball that they had that touch. Like
Yeah.
And it really brings flavor for the some of the players who are not from North America, right? Like they pick their more like maybe a more Latin kind of song or
Yeah,
something for a
absolutely.
lot of the those players, and like and you can and you feel the culture and you feel their energy so much more palpably because of that choice of music, and you're like, oh, this is great, like what a.
Yes.
And then the next person's like just like it's like 90s hip hop or something, and it's just this whole eclectic mix, but it makes also the team feel. It's almost like it is like in a film where, especially with like a classic film score, like in Star Wars, or like those any John Williams, score, where there's a theme for every major character
Yeah.
almost,
Yeah.
and it's the same thing in the baseball where you got a theme for every player, which especially for the home team really gives the fans even more character to latch onto with the players, and of course it's only adding to the experience, right?
And, imagine my surprise because I hadn't been to baseball games in forever. But the first time I noticed that, it's like, wow, so that guy listens to the same music I do, right?
Yeah,
And
also
I
that.
mean, there's a camaraderie there, obviously a team building thing. If you're a fan, you've got an immediate click that's a connection. Um, if you happen to listen to the same music, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you're like, well, what the heck are you listening to that for? So this is a much better song, right?
Mm,
But of course, the reason is close to your heart. So you choose what's close to your heart.
yeah.
I don't know if those change. I don't go to games enough, but I don't know if they change throughout the season. Like you might get to a point where you're in a slump or something. Like your old tune just isn't doing it, so you
Change it up.
superstitiously change it up, right?
Yeah. I mean, it goes for anything in life. Like, and I do use music for that a lot. Where I got one piece of music for one really thing I'm loving in life, and then all of a sudden things shift and change as they do always in life, and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, that song's just not doing it for me anymore. I
Right, right.
gotta, I gotta
Evolve.
change it up. Yeah, I gotta evolve. I need a new one that's gonna get me going now, and it's just the old one's not doing it. So you cycle through these things, and it just goes back to one knowing what music works for you, and having that more intentional way of look. We can always fall back into just appreciating and enjoying music for what it is. Great, that's fine, but it is fun to here and there add that intention to the music that you're listening to, because it really can do so many things, like enhance existing situations, pump you up for things that you need to be pumped up for. If you've got a big business presentation, or you've got a big lecture that you're giving, or whatever the situation is, like it doesn't have to be sports or something more dramatic, but it really could be, my God, it could be having a really difficult conversation with a loved one, perhaps even. You could listen
Yeah.
to music that maybe calms you down, gets you more into a love state, that you're not going to just have an angry call, you're going to have a more centered around respect and love or something, and listen to something that brings you into that state. I mean, you can obviously apply it to anything. But it is something I've learned a lot through you, Bill, is listening with intention to specific music that has that effect on you.
Just a little bit of intention changes the whole thing.
Big
It
time.
just like magically, but it's more powerful than magic. You know what I mean? It's just introducing that little thing. Of
Oh yeah.
course, there's also time to introduce silence,
Oh, big time. Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So one of the moments of tension in this Stranger Things episode is the rest of them have to decide what the right song is,
Wow.
right? And they're just scrambling. They're like, what is it? What is it? What's the favorite song? What do we use, right? And it's
Yeah, that's so cool.
really, I mean, I'm kind of laughing about it now, but that marvelous moment when you know that there's something you can do, but you're not sure exactly what music to pick,
Mm.
and who knows if they pick the right music or not. I mean, later on, you're going to learn more about this, and I won't give that away. But it's really it's so well done to introduce that kind of tension too. Like, what music does Chris need right now? And to tie this into your story, where you were talking about how you just sort of picked up the guitar and riffed for your friend, um, it's inspired. I think there's no other way to say it. You can make a lucky guess, but it doesn't have to be a lucky guess. It can be an inspired thing where in that moment, your consciousness is in alignment with what your friend needs. I'm not going to say empath, but it's like that. If you know your friend well enough, you know what to do. And it's not like you intellectually know what to do. You just are in the moment and the right music comes to you, you know. I've had that happen so many times, like playing the piano of all places at Nordstrom,
Hmm.
where I'm just playing something and, I don't know why I'm playing it. Somebody will come up and say, that's exactly the song I wanted to hear. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Great. I don't know that that's marketable in any sense, but I fully believe that if you're in music, there's some other sort of guiding um,
Force.
force, yeah, power, awareness,
Hmm.
um, because I don't feel like, oh, I'm obviously choosing to play. It's like, oh, I'll play this now. But I'm not going and like, oh, what are the people in the store walking around right now want to hear, right? That's definitely not what I'm thinking as I'm sitting there playing. But there is a feeling that's like, oh, this is the right song. And oftentimes it'll just sort of pop into my mind. And so I play it next. And more often than not, that particular insight, awareness, whatever, is followed a few minutes later by somebody coming up and saying something about the music I just played. I've had the other
Well,
kind too, man, where they come up and say, you know what? You don't need to be playing here anymore. You're too loud. Stop playing,
oh,
ragtime.
the amount of times I've heard, can you just turn it down a little bit? And I'm like,
Yeah.
depends.
Yeah. Oh,
I'd
dude,
rather not.
I was playing one time. I mean, literally, I'm sitting at the 9-foot Steinway grand piano, and somebody came up behind me because the escalator is to my right, so lots of people going by, and grabbed my arms, just pulled my arms off the keys.
Wow.
And I had two immediate moments of consciousness. The first one was to do, deck the guy, just reach back, just bam. And the second one was to remember
I'm
who
with
I
you on
am
the
and
yeah.
where I am.
I'm with you on the first one.
Talk about triggering.
Oh man,
Yeah,
oh,
you get all kinds. But hey,
you do.
music is powerful. This guy thought he was going to have some fun. Great. It wouldn't have happened without the music. I hope he had fun, and the people that were with him laughed. Cool, right?
Great.
No harm, no foul. I'm okay. He's okay. A brief interruption in the music that would have happened anyway if somebody had come on the loudspeaker and wanted to page somebody. It would have been the same thing. So
Yeah,
who cares?
yeah, yeah. I guess it's just I think, man, for me, like the as a musician, the triggers of being told to be quiet or noise complaints, which happen so often,
All the time.
still all the time to this day, and just the balance that you have to sometimes find where you're like, all right, but at the same time, like where it's funny how other uh, professions, if I've got like a chainsaw going off in the backyard throughout the whole day, no one's gonna come over and complain.
Or a jackhammer.
Or a jackhammer, construction. I mean, there's noise all the time. No one, they complain, but no, they never do anything about it, and they never go up to the place and be like, "Can you?" And like, if they do, they're just told to shut up usually, and then they have to take it and not do anything with it. It's so funny with music that it's like very common that people are just like, "Ah, can you keep it down?" I'm like, well. I do this for a living. Where else, when else can I do this? And that's the balance. And that's obviously like, I think it's a trigger for a lot of musicians because we're told so often to just pipe down. And you're like, well, how else do I practice? I remember once I actually ended up one of the final straws of where I got evicted for sound and noise complaints. I've been evicted twice for noise issues.
Right on. Yes.
Yeah, I know. And I'll admit, in those days in my 20s, I was definitely a lot more rebellious. And when I got the noise complaints, I was like, all right, well, F you, and I'm going to keep playing, well, maybe more loudly now just to spite you. And so
Exactly.
I definitely had it coming. But I remember once I got a severe noise complaint because I tried to actually work with the people here, and I had an electric keyboard. I put my headphones on, so it was only coming through the headphones, and they complained about the
Yeah.
tapping of my fingers on the keys. That's what they complain about. So I was like, all right, I just got to get out of this building.
Yeah. This is just not happening.
It's clearly not working. So it's funny.
There's so much. I guess I'll say this a different way. Aren't the levels of consciousness beautiful?
Don't they make life far more colorful and interesting and
Yeah.
entertaining?
Especially for those of us who are making noise on purpose, right?
Oh, I there's a great Far Side comic. It's a for those listening, Far Side. I think it's a pretty old comic from I don't know how long ago, many decades at this point. It's a pretty old one, and there's a one, just it's like a one picture with a quick little blurb comic. And my dad always loved this one. He showed it to me, and it was God, with the Earth. Like Earth is just this ball on a table, and he's got a jar, and it's labeled idiots, and he's sprinkling
Sprinkling
idiots
people.
or jerks and stuff onto the Earth, and the caption below is just to make it interesting.
I'm with you on that.
And I'm like, fair. It is more interesting that way.
It is. There's something for everyone in this music thing. I love the fact that even the simplest one note, kind of music can change everything. And I guess there's situations where that's appropriate. I mean, maybe singing the Om inside the pyramids, right? You're
Oh,
not gonna. You're getting too much of an echo to do anything complex with melody.
yeah, one note's all you need.
That's all you need, and the overtones take care of the rest. And there's
Great. Go ahead.
no, I was just saying nothing scientific or fancy about Stranger Things. The irony, of course, is that the character's listening in a headset, so nobody else can hear the music. And I don't think anybody else is really aware of exactly what's happening. Obviously, they find out later. But even that very personal thing, and yeah, I don't write scripts for a living, but it's really cool that they made it so individual and allowed just one person's experience to change because of the introduction of music.
Powerful.
I'm wondering if and I don't know, I've never been in that kind of a terrifying situation where the music that I remember gets me out of it. And the one terrifying situation I was in, I had music in my headphones on purpose. So I was actually able to hear it. Even when I fell asleep and was out of it, I could still hear it playing. But I don't know, it's so nuanced. I'm thinking of that movie, I think it's called Alive Inside, the one you're referring to with Oliver Sacks. I've seen that clip of the
Yeah.
old black guy they put on
Yeah.
a headset and
Yeah.
he just comes alive.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. That is such a beautiful sort of coming alive. It's not a rescue in the same sense,
It's like
but
reanimation.
it's a reanimation.
It's crazy.
And the fact that I'm sure this stuff is not lost on the writers for Stranger Things. So to bring it in that way and offer sort of the next level experience on that. We like to think of music as being like the soothing things that makes it all happy and joyous and whatever. And I think it's brave of them to have taken it to the next level and said, okay, in this dark place, let's see how music works. Or
Right.
offer what we can guess might be a reasonable explanation of it, but it's very compelling. And to the point where it really gets you in the heart to watch this sequence happen. One of the most beautiful, terrifying moments of that show. And there have been lots of terrifying moments. And obviously there are in this particular season as well. But just to tag into the end, the Duffer Brothers are doing a lot with isolating music all the way through. And so I'm curious to see how this theme continues throughout the series, which we haven't finished watching yet. But there'll be moments where they pan through a room and the camera will stop on a phonograph that's playing a piece of music and then we'll continue, right?
Wow.
So there's a real intentional thing to their use of music in this particular season of the show. We'll have to revisit this after we've both seen it and see what we think.
Well, yeah. I mean, after talking to you now, I'm like, I can't not watch it. I have to go in there and.
Yeah, be careful. It's terrifying, Chris. It's terrifying.
Yeah, they do a good job with that.
It's really amazing. I wish we had a giant screen, flat screen TV where we could see everybody life size or something. But
It's so well put together, that show. I mean, the first season's still my favorite. It's just like one of the best movie slash. I mean, it's a TV show, but it really plays like a film. And the music is just the written music, the composed music is just as good as the chosen music, which is just brilliantly chosen as well.
Oh yeah.
And they weave them together just marvelously. And I just love how even with the composed music, it'll sometimes tie into physical things happening on the screen, like when the light bulbs that she puts together to kind of communicate with her son on the upside down or on the other side of reality, they light up and the music moves with the lights lighting up. And I mean, we've seen this many times in film, things getting synced to the music, but it's because it works. And using music, like the Looney Tunes, the way that every note, every action of the character has a musical action as well, and the power that has is always pretty profound. You don't need it in every film. Actually, some films benefit from silence, like No Country for Old Men. I always loved that film because
Yeah.
there was literally no score, no music ever in
Yeah.
that film. And getting back to what you said, sometimes silence is so important. But of course, there's really no such thing as silence because even in yeah, I've gone into some of those like sound, not just in a studio, but like actually like at science centers and stuff, science worlds or whatever, that where you have some of those booths that they've tried to like make it as quiet as humanly possible so that you're in like
Yep. Yep.
negative decibel land or something. And you still hear things because what? You make sound, your body, your heart, your lungs, like that's making sound. So there's no such real thing as there's no sound, but it's more that instead of listening to music, you're listening to wind or birds chirping or kids playing in the playground down the street or whatever. And that actually, I find there's quite a lot of times I'm outside and I consciously take the headphones out, and I just need to take in a couple of blocks of just ambience and just not listen to music because I think it can be used as a crutch a lot of the time too. And you can definitely, like if anything in life, you can overdo it. You can definitely over listen to music, stimulate yourself. And that has its own consequences too. So, use it intentionally, but also take time to be in silence. And by silence, it's just listening to the nature, listening to what's around you.
I suspect consciousness is sensory deprived of all of the physical senses. Like if you were to say, what is consciousness? You'd start by turning off all the five senses, and then
Probably.
seeing what your awareness has for you and go from there, right? And wandering into that place, which must be pretty quiet,
Or
although,
is it? But
or
like, and then you have to get
maybe
into
it's,
what is quiet.
yeah, what is internally, what's the internal music, that happens in that
The
place,
symphony of the cosmos. I mean, I've heard things
right?
that like there's this music of the universe,
Yeah.
that planets have their own frequencies that are getting emitted all the time, and maybe once you take out the five senses, which are actually quite limited, they're
Yeah,
fun. They're
frequency
fun.
range is kind of narrow
Oh
and
my God, like just the
visual
things that
range.
we can hear is tiny, like 20 to 20,000 hertz or whatever. Like that's nothing. And then the visible light spectrum is like 1% of what is actually going on out there. So probably, if anything, you turn off all the five senses and just go into consciousness, you might be getting way more than you ever would have got in this physical body.
Yeah, we're pretty
Maybe.
limited receptors.
I would say so. I
So,
feel like if anything, if once we're back out of our bodies and if we're just our consciousness, I think we'll be taking in a lot more information.
gosh, I hope so. I mean, dark matter, right? It's like the oceans. It's way more present than land,
Oh yeah,
you know?
oh yeah, big
And
time.
I don't know how they measure that in the universe, but maybe it's the space between all the stuff we can see is the dark matter. And there's a lot of that.
Oh my God, there's more of that than anything else. I think we don't know what makes up like 94% of the mass of the whole universe.
That makes
Like
sense.
something like crazy, man. It's just about the same as like you said, the oceans. We know more about Mars than we do of our own oceans, which is kind of absurd when you think about that.
Yeah, it's like, well, there's too many analogies for that I won't go into. And yes. So are we going to advocate for music as a peacekeeping tool? Like if somebody is pointing a gun at you and you say, "So what's the song on your heart right now?" Is that a better intervention than drawing down and shooting back?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen this in history. Music has been used definitely to advocate for peace. I mean, I've heard in some documentaries people say like music and musicians or artists are the prophets, and they're the people that in a lot of ways can bring new ideas in times of a lot of discourse and
Yeah.
divide and trouble and violence, and even having people singing at like protests versus yelling and screaming and rioting has much, much, much more profound and actually more long lasting effects. I mean, I've heard arguments that the bands like the Beatles helped bring down the Berlin Wall. It wasn't just the acts of people actually physically tearing down the wall, but what needed to happen before that was music to inspire them to break free of those confines. So, yeah, I mean, look, there's a time and a place for all these different things. I'm not going to say that sometimes you don't need to literally just defend yourself, because I think that'd be also naive to say that 100% of the time you don't need to ever have defense for your own well-being. Can think of many times where that's probably necessary, but it also doesn't mean that music isn't extraordinarily powerful and definitely useful for bringing peace, bringing people's anger and aggression down by a certain degree in any situation, even smaller situations. Like, I remember, as a fun example, I was visiting my family last summer, and I love my family very much, but I'm definitely like the black sheep of the family. So I think I see things very differently than they do, and usually runs into some fun arguments. And I was in one with my dad, and we got to a point where, you get to those points in arguments where you're like, okay, well, what else can we say? We're both on such opposite sides, and is there really any point in continuing? So I would take that hint and just go like, all right, so what song do you want to play? And then he picks up his bass, and I pick up the guitar, and we play a Beatles song, for example, or something, and play Let It Be. And after that song, we're like, wait, were we arguing about something? Like, I kind of forgot what that was. I had such a great time playing that song. I am now in another state of consciousness. So the anger has dissipated significantly, and now we're actually bonding over something that we have in common, which I think
Yes.
everyone has music in common.
But when you strip away all the other stuff, it's a great place to start the bonding exercise, when nothing else is connecting you. I agree.
Yeah, play a tune.
Play a tune, or put on a piece of music if you don't
Yeah,
play.
of course. Yeah.
Put on something that you can share in the room, and
You're like, hey,
see
check out
what
this new
happens.
song. I heard this really cool, fun, remake of a Elton John song, which I did hear recently. It's really, really catchy.
Cool.
And just something like that. Like, hey, like you inject a little music into the situation. Holy cow! On other small levels too. And this is maybe something we should talk about in another episode, because the amount of experience I've had where, let's say you're at an event of any kind and there's no music going on, then you just put on just something with a bit of life, like maybe some Motown or some nice R&B in the background, and then all of a sudden you feel the conversations just all of a sudden get way more exciting and interesting, and everyone's like, and the energy is just boom, like exponentially increased in this party or in this at this event, just because music was added to just to the background, not to the foreground. No one's even really listening to it, but it's there, and all of a sudden everyone's like, energy and having a great time, and all of a sudden it's a party now. And all you did was add music to the equation. I find that so fun I see it all the time.
I agree with you about that, because there's so many restaurants where they're not really paying attention to the music, and sometimes it'll stop like for a while until somebody gets around to it and goes and starts another playlist or something. But there are also the very intentional restaurants, right? Where they're on it, they're like making sure that the mood is this, and they've got it dialed in.
And those are my places, by the way.
Exactly. Right. And that's so, thank you, music, because I think it indicates, if nothing else, a sort of an audit trail of how consciousness has shifted. I love that you mentioned the Berlin Wall and the potential for the Beatles, well, potential for all music having
Yeah.
been part of the change of consciousness that's taken place between, I don't know, the end of the Cold War and now, which here we are again, right, in some
Yeah.
other kind of strange conflict. But music is working. There was some, I don't know, some live event with a classical piano player from the Ukraine who was just talking about, music in the Ukraine and what that's like. And, well attended. People are curious. They want to know, right? What is it like to be a musician right now
Yeah.
over there? And I love that awareness. I just love that awareness. Who cares about the quality of music? It's gone way beyond whether you like the music or not, right? It's gone to this place where it's like, oh, we're way more accepting of our own sort of preferences than we used to be, which is also really cool, And we're all, of course, still struggling to find the ideal song, right? There's always a quest. And admit it. If you're listening to this right now, you're looking for that perfect song, right? It's out there. And otherwise, we'd stop listening and say, "No, I'm fine. Beethoven is as good as it gets."
And I think we can agree that who wants the perfect song? I mean, that would be kind of boring. Again,
wouldn't it? Yeah, it'd be so.
If you didn't have the crazy people in the world making the crazy world, it wouldn't be as interesting. If you didn't have and the next greatest song or something to one up the last one, then again, what would be the pursuit of being a music nerd like we are, or just an appreciator or whatever? I mean, I think that's part of the fun too, is finding that new song that just like, oh right, I love this. This is great. Like that first time you hear it is always a really great experience,
I wish that we could all do a memory wipe so we could experience that first song or first movie anytime we wanted to, but as if we'd never heard or seen it before.
I've felt that many times.
That's like we should, okay, maybe we should just delete that from the But wouldn't that be great to have that kind of control?
Oh yeah. I mean, imagine, I get to reread Harry Potter, but not reread it,
Yes. Yes, you could just experience the whole thing or the Lord of the Rings, anything, right? Stranger Things.
Oh, man.
Although it's been such a long time, Anyway, I'm glad that the latest season is out and that everybody's binge watching it.
We'll get them to sponsor our next episode.
Why not?
Because now I want to watch it, so it's working. It's good marketing.
Oh, it is so cool. You will laugh, you will cry. I mean, it is just so incredibly well done.
I love, yeah.
And it's only the 80s? How long ago? The 80s weren't that long ago. And yet you can see how we've shifted as a culture.
So much.
Since the 80s. In really good ways, and also some pretty screwed up ones. But okay, so fine, we're learning. As a civilization, we're getting there. We're getting there. It's good. It's good. We should probably wrap this up. So I won't spoil any more of Stranger Things for you, but watch it.
Those listening and myself will be watching it. Yeah.
It's really, it's a great way to, and I'm not going to say waste. It's a great way to engage with art. Wow. You and I love the same movies, and Stranger Things has that amazing combination of writing and visuals and music and just, it's acting.
I was going to say the cast is fantastic.
They're amazing. So well worth what does Netflix cost? But well worth whatever the price is you're paying for Netflix right now.
$11 a month? I don't know.
Yeah, whatever it is, it's worth it. And go Netflix. To keep giving us great stuff.
Yeah, you know what? Like, I need my conscious content that gets my brain going and lights me up spiritually, and then I need my sometimes more unconscious content, which I can find more readily on Netflix, and I think that's important too. Sometimes you just got to turn off that brain. And Stranger Things, I don't think falls into that. It's very you're in it, and it's lighting up a lot of things. So it's very high caliber entertainment. Certainly there's a lot of heart and soul and lessons and ideas going on there, but I mean in general Netflix typically is something that a lot of us kind of zone out to. But you know what, there's nothing wrong with zoning out every now and then. We need a break. Our brains and our hearts and conscious need a freaking break from all the craziness. So thank you Netflix for the break from reality for a little bit.
Brought to you by, this is Discussions of Music, Healing, and Consciousness.
Sponsored by Netflix.
Oh, please. Hello.
Or Disney Plus, whichever one.
Whichever one will be fine.
Whichever one you want to do.
I don't know if is this a family show? What do you think, Chris?
It's for all ages, but I think we've been swearing a decent amount on some of these episodes. So I think
plus we talk about illegal substances and.
So for that reason alone, this is not a family show.
Yeah, it's not a family show. But it is a Netflix sponsorable show. If you're listening, Netflix.
That's for sure.
Looking for an activity. we're happy to align with you and promote your content.
You hear that, Netflix? Well, thanks, Bill. I think that's a great thing to talk about, and I'm really now inspired to watch Stranger Things, but also just to bring back more of that intentionality with music and really, I think a fun thing that people can walk away with is, one, do you dream music ever? Question mark. Because I don't actually really know, and I'm gonna have to now pay a bit more attention. Where does music come up in my dreams? That's really cool. So I'll report back on the next episode about that. And just a nice reminder for the audience, bring that intention back into music and see where it takes you. What are those songs that bring you to very, very vivid places, whether it's, getting pumped up for something really important, whether it's calming down from something really intense, whatever it is, let us know what songs really, really seem to work in shifting your consciousness and getting you to a different place, or enhancing, I guess, a current state.
Sure. Yeah. Or if you got a lifeline song, that.
Oh yeah.
That's, when you're at the end of your rope and you tie a knot and hang on, you got a song like that.
We can branch it a little bit out, because I think for me, movies or TV shows or books that are also lifelines, I'd be curious to hear, because I know for me, Lord of the Rings is the movies have been like a lifeline I have used, and of course the music in those films plays a huge role. But I'd be curious at what art keeps you guys going when times get really tough, and I think we can all have related on that over the last couple of years. Certainly, we've had so many ups and downs collectively as a human species that we all need the help of things like art to keep us sane.
Truly well said, and a good plug for all the visual artists who are out there too, because as great as music is, pull it all together. movies, sculpture.
We need it all.
Painting.
It's all.
The written word, spoken word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's
been enough to keep us connected over the course of and it's not just social media. It's fine, social media, we'll talk about it. But I love the fact that we connect with music in this world.
Me too.
It's so precious, and here we are. We get to talk about it. Right?
I can't help but say, my precious.
Oh, right. There was a reason I used that word, wasn't there?
It's the Lord of the Rings. It's in there.
I wish I could somehow make our entire Zoom session sort of spin upside down right now, just slowly, rotate slowly.
Oh, for those listening, we're always doing these on Zoom, and now I'm thinking of Stranger Things again, because that's exactly what that would look like. We're moving into the upside down.
And getting darker, and sinister.
Yes, very sinister. Yeah.
So before that happens, thank you all for listening.
Yes. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening in on our conversation, and for taking time to show your appreciation with a like, share, or subscribe. Discussions of Music, Healing, and Consciousness is a practice of spontaneity, and we welcome your comments, ideas, and questions. There are ways to connect with us in the show notes, so let us hear from you. Until next time, this is Bill Pratzman along with Chris Noble, wishing you great musical health. Samara Huchaya.